People think they've heard every Hollywood rumor already, but this one is crawling back into the spotlight with a brand new edge, and fans are shocked at how messy it sounds. Because according to what's being talked about online right now, Katt Williams didn't just crack a joke or throw shade. The reports claim he pulled back the curtain on a moment he says changed how he looked at Martin Lawrence forever. And here's the part that has social media acting like the room just went silent. The chatter says Katt is telling a story about a so-called dress deal, something he claims was pushed in front of him like it was routine. Not a creative choice, not a one-time gag, but a pattern, a test. And in Katt's version, Martin wasn't just another comedian in the mix. He was the one on the phone, sounding like family, calling him little brother, talking like they were about to lock in on a real comeback together. But then the alleged promise flips. One minute, it's a two-man movie, shoulder to shoulder, the kind of partnership that would shut the internet down. The next minute, Katt claims the script on the table wasn't what he was told. And that's where emotions ran high, because the way this is being described, Katt didn't walk into a business meeting. He walked into a trap, dressed up like an opportunity. And if the reports are to be believed, Katt didn't just say no, he pushed back hard. Why does it have to be a dress again? That's the line people keep repeating, the one fans are clipping and reposting like it's evidence in a case. And now everyone's asking the same question. Was this really about comedy, or was it about control? Because once this story hit the timeline, the reaction wasn't normal celebrity gossip. It was panic, it was debate, it was old interviews resurfacing, and it was fans digging through footage like they're trying to solve a mystery that Hollywood never wanted solved. And the wildest part is, this isn't just about what Katt is allegedly saying Martin tried to pull. It's about what it suggests happened behind the scenes after. Who backed who into a corner, who switched up, who stayed quiet, and why this rumor refuses to die. So now the internet is split right down the middle, and the pressure is building. Because if this story keeps growing, somebody's going to have to address it. And when that happens, it won't be pretty. When people started talking about this story, the first thing that stood out was not anger, but confusion. Fans were trying to figure out when things supposedly shifted, and why this conversation was suddenly resurfacing now. According to reports being discussed online, Katt Williams has been revisiting moments from his past, and one of those moments involves a phone call that felt more personal than professional. The way it is being described, Martin Lawrence did not sound like a distant Hollywood figure. He sounded like someone reaching out in trust, someone speaking from a place of familiarity and shared struggle. The narrative going around says Martin was in a strange phase of his life at the time. People close to the situation allegedly noticed he was quieter, more guarded, and cautious in ways that felt new. This was after years of chaos, controversy, and nonstop pressure. The story claims Martin was trying to stabilize his career, rebuild trust with studios, and protect what he had left. From the outside, it looked like strategy. From the inside, according to speculation, it felt like survival. Katt, on the other hand, was being painted as the opposite. Reports describe him as loud, unfiltered, and completely uninterested in playing it safe. Fans already knew him as someone who did not bite his tongue, but what is now being discussed is how that personality allegedly clashed with the environment Martin was operating in. When Martin supposedly talked about working together, Katt is said to have taken it seriously, not as a deal, but as a bond. The idea floating around is that Katt believed this was about restoring something real, something creative, something honest. People online claim the mood changed the moment the script came into the conversation. The way this is being retold, Katt walked into a room expecting one thing and walked out realizing the rules had already been decided without him. Sources say the script represented more than a movie. It represented a direction, a formula, something familiar to audiences but uncomfortable for artists who felt boxed in by it. The alleged tension did not come from laughter or jokes, it came from silence. Fans speculate that Katt read through the pages slowly, letting the reality settle in. In this version of events, no one raised their voice at first. Instead, there was a pause, heavy and awkward, where everyone understood that this was not what had been promised. The idea being pushed online is that Martin looked conflicted, almost distant, as if he already knew how this would end. This is where the phrase fans keep repeating enters the picture. According to chatter, Katt questioned why the same approach had to be repeated again, not as an attack, but as a challenge. Why recycle the same image when there were endless possibilities? Why lean into something that had already been done instead of creating something new? These questions are what reportedly shifted the energy in the room. Emotions ran high, not because of yelling, but because of disappointment. Some fans believe this was the first real crack, the moment where Katt realized the decision might not actually belong to Martin. The story suggests that Martin was operating inside a system that rewarded predictability and punished resistance. Whether that is true or not, the perception alone has fueled intense debate. People started revisiting Martin's career choices, his public appearances, and even his body language in interviews, trying to connect dots that may or may not exist. According to the narrative spreading online, Katt did not storm out or burn bridges publicly. Instead, he quietly stepped back. This detail has become important to fans because it contrasts with the image of Katt as explosive and confrontational. The idea that he simply withdrew made the situation feel heavier, like a door closing instead of a fight breaking out. People close to the rumor claim that Katt felt the request crossed a line, not creatively, but personally. The story then shifts to what happened after. Fans say the project moved forward without him, reinforcing Katt's belief that the role was never truly his to begin with. This is where accusations start to form in the public imagination. Not accusations of crime or conspiracy, but of compromise. Was Martin protecting his position? Was he pressured? Or was this simply business being mistaken for brotherhood? Online reactions exploded once this angle took hold. Fans were shocked, not just by the idea of a disagreement, but by what it symbolized. Comment sections filled with arguments about identity, respect, and the price of staying relevant in Hollywood. Some defended Martin, saying survival sometimes means choosing battles carefully. Others sided with Katt, saying integrity should never be negotiable. The emotional conflict at the center of this story is what keeps it alive. It is not about a costume or a script alone, it is about trust. People are responding to the possibility that two men who came up fighting the same battles ended up standing on opposite sides of an invisible line, one choosing stability, the other choosing resistance. As this discussion continues, fans have begun revisiting old interviews, stand-up clips, and behind-the-scenes footage, searching for moments that now feel different in hindsight. Pauses that once seemed harmless are now interpreted as tension. Jokes are re-examined as coded messages. Even silence has become suspicious. What makes this story so compelling is that no one involved has fully confirmed or denied these interpretations. The absence of clear answers allows imagination to fill the gaps. Every retelling adds emotion, every reaction adds fuel. People are not just watching a story unfold, they are participating in it, reshaping it with every comment and repost. By the time this part of the narrative settles, one thing is clear. Whether these reports reflect reality or perception, they have reopened an old conversation about choice, power, and what it costs to say no. And that question lingers quietly, waiting for the next piece of the story to push it further. When this story started circulating again, people didn't immediately treat it like breaking news. At first, it felt like another rumor pulled from old interviews and stitched together by fans who love connecting dots. But the more the details were repeated, the harder it became to ignore how specific the claim sounded. According to what is being discussed online, Katt Williams did not randomly bring this up. The timing alone raised eyebrows. Fans began saying it felt intentional, like something he had been holding on to for years and finally decided to let breathe. The reports claim the situation traces back to a moment when Martin Lawrence was trying to study his footing in Hollywood. After years of headlines, controversies, and personal struggles, the public image around him had shifted. People say he was no longer moving like the wild force of the 90s. Instead, he appeared more careful, more selective, and more aware of how thin the line was between being celebrated and being pushed aside. To fans watching from the outside, it looked like maturity. To others, it looked like caution shaped by pressure. Katt's name entering that space is what gave the story its edge. Fans already viewed Katt as someone who never fit neatly into industry expectations. He was loud, unpredictable, and openly critical of systems that tried to shape him. When rumors began suggesting that Martin personally reached out to Katt, it felt significant.
Not just a casting call, but a gesture that implied respect and shared history. According to the narrative being passed around, the tone of that outreach mattered. It was not framed as a deal, but as a partnership. People online say Katt believed that message. He allegedly felt this was about two comedians who understood each other's battles, finally standing side by side. The idea of a comeback project built on equality struck a chord with fans who admired both men for different reasons. For a brief moment, the imagined outcome felt powerful. Two voices, two energies, meeting in the middle without compromise. But then the mood of the story shifts. Fans claim the optimism faded once details began to surface. According to the reports, the script that appeared did not reflect the conversation Katt thought he had agreed to. Instead of something fresh or bold, it followed a familiar formula. People describe this as the moment confusion turned into tension. Not explosive tension, but the quiet kind that makes a room feel smaller. Those retelling the story emphasize that Katt did not react with immediate anger. Instead, there was a pause that said more than shouting ever could. Fans imagine him reading, rereading, and realizing that the direction was already locked in. The discomfort came from feeling like the decision had been made before his voice even entered the room, and that feeling, according to speculation, cut deeper than a simple disagreement over comedy. This is where the phrase that keeps trending enters the discussion. Reports say Katt questioned why the same approach had to be repeated, not as a joke, but as a serious challenge. Why return to an image that had already defined the past when the future could look different? Fans latched onto this moment because it symbolized resistance. It was not about refusing humor, it was about refusing limitation. People online began to debate what Martin's role in this moment might have been. Some believe he was fully on board with the direction and simply expected Katt to fall in line. Others think Martin was stuck between his own instincts and the expectations surrounding him. The lack of clarity fueled speculation. Was Martin protecting his position? Was he pressured to deliver something safe? Or was this simply a misunderstanding amplified by time? As the discussion grew, fans started revisiting Martin's career with new eyes. Interviews that once felt relaxed were now read as guarded. Moments of silence were interpreted as restraint rather than calm. The narrative that formed suggested a man who had learned the cost of pushing back too hard. Whether fair or not, this perception became part of the story itself. Katt's alleged response became another focal point. According to those sharing the rumor, he chose not to fight publicly. He did not call anyone out at the time or drag the situation into headlines. Instead, he stepped away. Fans say this choice added weight to his later comments, making them feel less like bitterness and more like reflection. The idea that he walked away quietly challenged the stereotype people often place on him. Once the project moved forward without him, speculation intensified. Fans claim this confirmed their belief that the opportunity was conditional from the start. The emotional conflict at the heart of the story grew clearer. It was no longer about a role, but about autonomy, about whether saying no automatically places someone outside the circle. Online reactions became divided. Some defended Martin, arguing that survival in Hollywood requires compromise. Others sided with Katt, saying that certain lines should never be crossed. Comment sections filled with debates about identity, respect, and power. Emotions ran high, not because of proof, but because the story touched something personal for many viewers. What keeps this narrative alive is the absence of definitive answers. No clear confirmations, no direct denials. Just fragments, memories, and interpretations layered over time. Fans continue to dissect old clips and quotes, searching for meaning where none may exist. Every retelling adds intensity, turning speculation into something that feels almost tangible. By the end of this chapter of the story, the central question remains unresolved. Was this a simple creative disagreement, or a moment that revealed deeper truths about how decisions are made behind closed doors? That uncertainty hangs in the air, setting the stage for everything that follows. As the conversation continued to spread, fans began focusing less on the script itself and more on the emotional aftermath that supposedly followed. According to what people are saying online, the real damage did not happen inside that meeting room. It happened after everyone went their separate ways. The silence that followed is what made the situation feel heavy. No public statements, no clarifications, just distance. And in Hollywood, distance often speaks louder than
words. The story being passed around suggests that Martin Lawrence returned to his routine almost immediately, leaning into projects that felt safe and familiar. Fans interpreted this as a sign that he was choosing stability over conflict. Some even said they noticed a shift in how he carried himself in interviews during that period. His laughter seemed more controlled, his answers more measured. Whether this was intentional or simply a coincidence, the perception stuck. People began to believe he was guarding himself. Katt, meanwhile, was reportedly processing the situation very differently. Those close to the rumor claim he felt blindsided, not because of rejection, but because of expectation. In his mind, according to fans, the promise of working together meant trust had already been established. When that trust felt compromised, it left a mark. The narrative online paints Katt as someone who internalized the moment rather than exploding over it. That restraint surprised many who only knew his public persona. As months passed, fans noticed that Katt became even more vocal in his stand-up routines. Jokes started carrying sharper edges, punchlines felt less playful and more pointed. People watching closely began to believe he was working through unresolved feelings on stage, not naming names but circling themes of control, obedience, and identity. Audiences laughed, but there was tension beneath it. Emotions ran high because it felt like comedy was being used as armor. The internet began connecting these performances back to the rumored disagreement. Clips were shared with captions suggesting hidden meanings. Lines that once seemed random were now framed as direct references. Whether this interpretation was accurate or not did not matter. What mattered was that fans believed there was something beneath the surface, and belief, once it spreads, becomes its own form of truth. At the same time, Martin's career trajectory became part of the debate. People pointed to the continued success of projects that leaned into familiar characters and formulas. Supporters argued that this consistency was proof of his genius and adaptability. Critics argued it showed a willingness to stay inside boundaries set by others. Neither side had evidence, only perspective, but the divide grew sharper with every post. Family and friends were pulled into the discussion indirectly. Fans speculated about private conversations that may have happened behind closed doors. Some imagined Martin being advised to avoid risks at all costs. Others imagined Katt being encouraged to soften his stance for the sake of opportunity. These imagined voices added layers to the story, turning it into something larger than two men disagreeing. It became a reflection of how support systems can sometimes feel like pressure. The emotional stakes escalated when fans began tying this narrative to broader patterns they believed existed in the industry. Online discussions expanded, drawing comparisons to other comedians and actors who faced similar crossroads. Names were mentioned, timelines were compared, and theories multiplied. The original story about a single disagreement transformed into a symbol of something bigger, something systemic, something uncomfortable. This is where reactions became intense. Some viewers felt validated, saying the story confirmed suspicions they had held for years. Others pushed back hard, accusing the narrative of being unfair and speculative. The comment sections turned into battlegrounds. Friendships online fractured over differing interpretations. Emotions ran high because people were no longer just discussing celebrities, they were discussing values. The idea that saying no could cost someone opportunities struck a nerve. Fans imagined themselves in that position, wondering what they would do if faced with the same choice: compromise or resistance, safety or self-respect. The story resonated because it mirrored real-life dilemmas, amplified by fame and money. That relatability kept it alive. As time went on, subtle moments were re-examined. Photos of Martin smiling were read as forced. Moments of Katt laughing were read as defiant. Nothing was neutral anymore. Every gesture became part of the narrative. This constant reinterpretation blurred the line between observation and projection, yet the audience remained invested. What made this part of the story especially compelling was the lack of closure. No apology, no reunion, no public acknowledgement. Just two careers moving forward on separate paths. Fans filled that gap with imagination, constructing endings that ranged from reconciliation to quiet resentment. Each version reflected the hopes or fears of the person telling it. Some fans even suggested that the silence itself was strategic, that addressing the story would only give it more power. Whether true or not, this idea added another twist. It framed the absence of response as a choice rather than avoidance, and that
choice became another point of debate. By the time this phase of the narrative settled, the story had evolved far beyond its starting point. It was no longer just about what was said or offered, it was about what was felt. Betrayal, disappointment, caution, defiance. These emotions shaped how fans understood every subsequent move made by both men. And with that emotional foundation laid, the conversation was ready to deepen even further, pulling in history, perception, and long-buried tension. As the story dug deeper, fans began dragging the past back into the present, and this is where everything started to feel heavier. Old clips, forgotten interviews, and half-remembered moments were suddenly treated like evidence. People weren't just reacting to what was allegedly said recently, they were reassessing entire careers through a new lens. What once felt like harmless comedy choices now looked to some like signs of pressure and compromise. Social media timelines filled with side-by-side comparisons. Early footage showing explosive energy was placed next to later appearances that felt calmer, slower, more restrained. Fans argued over whether this change was natural growth or something forced. Emotions ran high because both explanations felt possible. One side said this was simply aging and maturity. The other insisted the shift looked too sharp, too sudden to be coincidence. The conversation became even more intense when fans started revisiting moments where Martin appeared uncomfortable or distant in public settings. Pauses in interviews were clipped and replayed. Smiles were slowed down and analyzed. People claimed they could see hesitation where there used to be confidence. Whether these interpretations were fair did not matter anymore. Perception had already taken control of the narrative. Katt's past words were also pulled into the spotlight. Jokes that once felt abstract were now treated like confessions hiding in plain sight. Fans quoted lines about control, ownership, and freedom, arguing that he had been telling this story for years without naming names. Laughter turned into analysis. Punchlines became clues. The comedy stage was reframed as a courtroom where truth slipped out disguised as humor. The reactions of fans grew louder and more emotional. Some felt protective of Martin, insisting that turning him into a symbol was unfair and cruel. They argued that no one could survive decades of fame without making compromises. Others felt protective of Katt, praising him for refusing to bend even when it cost him opportunities. The family was left divided, not by blood, but by belief. Media outlets began circling the conversation carefully. Articles were written using cautious language, framing everything as discussion and reaction rather than fact. Phrases like "sources claim" and "fans speculate" filled headlines. This careful distance only fueled curiosity. People felt like something was being danced around rather than addressed directly. Silence from those involved made the speculation louder. Then came the twist that pushed the debate into overdrive. Fans began linking this rumored disagreement to moments when Martin's health became a topic of concern. Old incidents were resurfaced, retold with heightened emotion. Timelines were drawn, dots were connected. Suddenly, what had started as a discussion about creative control turned into something darker in the minds of some viewers. Comments began suggesting that pressure does not always show up as contracts or meetings. Sometimes it shows up as exhaustion, sometimes as fear, sometimes as a person slowly becoming smaller to survive a system that rewards obedience. These ideas spread quickly because they tapped into a deep distrust many people already had toward the entertainment industry. Others pushed back hard against this direction, warning that speculation was crossing into harmful territory. They reminded everyone that stress, health issues, and personal struggles can affect anyone, especially those under constant public scrutiny. They accused the narrative of turning concern into conspiracy. The arguments became emotional, personal, and relentless. The tension reached a new level when fans noticed how often the word choice remained careful in every retelling. No one said this definitely happened. Instead, they said this is what people are saying. This distancing created a strange effect. It allowed the story to grow while protecting everyone from responsibility. Rumors became almost official without ever being confirmed.
Behind-the-scenes reactions were imagined and debated endlessly. Fans speculated about private conversations between managers, advisors, and loved ones. Some believe Martin was encouraged to avoid risk at all costs. Others believe Katt was warned that his refusal would label him difficult. These imagined exchanges felt real because they mirrored stories people had heard about other artists. The emotional core of the story
continued to deepen. At its heart was a question many viewers could relate to. What do you sacrifice to stay in the game? Creativity or security? Identity or access? Fans projected their own experiences onto the situation, turning celebrities into mirrors for personal struggles. That emotional investment made the narrative nearly impossible to shut down. As weeks passed, the story evolved again. Fans began discussing the idea of legacy. Martin's body of work was praised, defended, and sometimes criticized through this new frame. Katt's career was re-examined as one of resistance rather than chaos. Both men were elevated and questioned at the same time. There were no clear heroes or villains, only choices and consequences. The lack of resolution became the most powerful element. No statement came to clear the air. No joint appearance silenced the rumors. Each day without clarification felt like confirmation to those already convinced. For skeptics, it was simply proof that the story did not deserve a response. Both sides dug in deeper. What made this chapter especially intense was how personal it felt to so many viewers. People argued not just about what might have happened, but about what should have happened. They debated what courage looks like, what loyalty means, and whether survival can justify silence. The discussion spilled beyond entertainment into philosophy and morality. By the end of this phase, the story had transformed completely. It was no longer anchored to a single meeting or a single decision. It had become a living narrative shaped by memory, emotion, and fear. Every new clip, every old quote, every quiet moment was now part of a larger picture that fans believed revealed something uncomfortable about fame itself. And just when it seemed like the debate could not grow any further, attention shifted once again, this time not to the past, but to the present, to recent appearances, subtle changes, and moments that reignited the entire conversation all over again, making people wonder if the story was finished or if it was only entering its most revealing stage yet. As attention shifted to the present, the discussion took on a new urgency that felt impossible to ignore. Fans were no longer just revisiting history or interpreting old jokes. They were watching current appearances with heightened sensitivity, convinced that every movement and expression carried meaning. Recent interviews, red carpet moments, and live appearances were slowed down, replayed, and dissected frame by frame. What might have once passed unnoticed was now treated like a signal. People online began pointing out how Martin seemed different in certain public moments. Not dramatic, not chaotic, just quieter. Pauses lasted longer, responses felt shorter. To some fans, this was proof of growth in age. To others, it was evidence of something unresolved still lingering beneath the surface. Emotions ran high because both interpretations felt deeply personal, depending on who was watching. The reactions around Katt during the same period added fuel to the fire. Fans noticed that his tone in interviews and stand-up routines carried a reflective edge. Not angry, not bitter, but firm. People said he sounded like someone who had made peace with his choices, even if those choices came with consequences. That calm confidence became part of his image in this narrative, reinforcing the idea that walking away had been intentional, not accidental. This contrast between the two men became a central theme in online conversations. Martin was seen by some as a survivor navigating carefully. Katt was seen by others as a resistor who accepted isolation over compromise. Neither image was confirmed, yet both felt convincing enough to spark endless debate. The family was left divided in the sense that fans aligned themselves emotionally with one interpretation or the other. What truly reignited everything was a series of viral clips from recent events. Fans shared moments where Martin appeared to rely on others nearby, moments where his presence felt softer than expected. Captions were written carefully, always framing observations as concern rather than accusation. Still, the implication was clear. People felt something had changed, and they wanted to understand why. Others pushed back immediately, calling this analysis invasive and unfair. They reminded everyone that aging, health, and personal loss can shape anyone's demeanor. They argued that reading hidden meaning into every gesture was dangerous. These warnings did little to slow the conversation. If anything, they intensified it by highlighting how emotionally charged the discussion had become. The story reached a strange turning point when fans began talking about recovery instead of decline. New footage showing Martin looking more energized sparked hope. People commented that he seemed steadier, more present, more himself. This created another twist. Was the narrative of control and loss
premature had the entire debate been built on selective moments rather than the full picture? This shift did not end the speculation. Instead, it complicated it. Fans now debated whether this change represented freedom, healing, or simply a good day caught on camera. The lack of clear answers kept the emotional tension alive. The story refused to settle into a single conclusion, constantly reshaping itself with each new piece of content. Meanwhile, discussions around Katt continued to frame him as a cautionary tale or a role model, depending on perspective. Some praised him for standing firm and protecting his identity. Others questioned whether his refusal limited his reach. These debates reflected broader anxieties about success and compromise, making the story feel larger than entertainment alone. What made this final phase of the main narrative so powerful was the sense that no one involved needed to say anything for the story to continue. Fans were doing the work themselves, filling silence with interpretation. Every absence of comment became meaningful. Every non-response was treated as intentional. The lack of confirmation became the engine driving the entire conversation forward. At its core, the narrative had transformed into a meditation on choice, not just the choice to accept or refuse a role, but the choice to speak or stay silent, to adapt or resist, to prioritize peace or ambition. Viewers saw themselves reflected in these dilemmas, which is why the story resonated so deeply and refused to fade. By the time this chapter of the discussion reached its peak, the original question about a supposed deal had almost become secondary. What mattered more was what people believed that deal represented: control versus creativity, safety versus truth, loyalty versus self-respect. These themes carried emotional weight far beyond any single rumor. Some fans held out hope for reconciliation, imagining a future moment where both men might address the past openly. Others believed that silence was the final answer, a sign that certain doors were meant to remain closed. Both ideas coexisted, fueling speculation without resolution. As the conversation settled into this uneasy balance, one thing became clear. The story was no longer about proving what happened. It was about exploring why it mattered so much to so many people. The emotional investment had turned a rumor into a reflection of collective fears and hopes about power, identity, and survival. And with that understanding, the main body of this narrative reached its quiet conclusion, not with answers, but with questions. Questions that linger in comment sections, private messages, and late-night discussions. Questions that refuse to be resolved neatly. Because sometimes the most powerful stories are not the ones that end cleanly, but the ones that stay with you, forcing you to think long after the screen goes dark. Now it's your turn to weigh in, because stories like this only stay alive when people start asking questions. You've heard the reports, you've seen how fans are reacting, and you've watched how every moment is being interpreted in 100 different ways. The big question is not what actually happened, but what you believe these conversations represent. Do you see this as a misunderstood creative disagreement that grew larger over time, or do you think it reflects something deeper about how choices are made behind the scenes? Fans are shocked because there are no easy answers here. Emotions ran high throughout this entire discussion, and the lack of clear confirmation leaves everything open to interpretation. Some people feel this story explains long-standing changes they've noticed. Others believe it proves how quickly speculation can turn into accepted narrative. Both sides have strong opinions, and that's what makes this conversation so intense. So ask yourself where you stand. If you were in that position, would you choose stability or risk? Would you stay quiet to protect what you've built,